Hello everyone, welcome to the second edition of the Gurumantra podcast. And here is your Guru Charan Kumar. Today we have a student guest speaker. Her name is Ishani Patil, who scored 43 points in the final IBA. Yes, you heard it right, 43 points. Ishani, welcome to the Gurumantra podcast and please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ishani Patil. I've been in pathway since the second grade, so that's around 10 to 11 years now. So I'm doing a double degree program for university, which is basically 2 years at SciencesPo, which is a university in France, and then 2 years at the National University of Singapore. And my major would be government and politics or political sciences for those 4 years. And I'll be getting 2 degrees from the universities at the end of that. For hobbies, I love traveling. I like debating. I like reading and writing a lot. Yeah.
Brilliant. Ishani, first we will go some of the questions related to TOK. So, as you got A in the TOK, can you tell to select a correct prompt on object for the TOK exhibition? How did you select? Please share your personal story.
Okay, so first the TOK exhibition, which happened when I was in 11th grade, and the way I chose my object for that, I think was a lot of researching, because I think if I had gone with the first figure I had seen on the internet or the first object that I picked up, that wouldn't have been able to kind of carry my commentary forward. So it was important to do, like, for every object I picked, it was important to talk to like friends and my supervisor to see that what they thought about the object. And there was also a brainstorming sheet that we were given for the object, which really helped a lot, because with each object I picked, I could see like how much it was able to support my argument. And for a lot of objects, it wasn't able to support my argument well, and so I had to go and find kind of better or more like holistic object. For the TOK prompt, that was a little trickier because the essay is graded higher than the commentary, and so they put a bit more pressure about selecting the correct prompt. Actually, the first prompt that I selected wasn't the prompt that I went with. So I think I would recommend for people to not be extremely dead set on the prompt that they first want to go with, and they should keep an open mind that okay, this could possibly change and you could possibly have a better experience with another prompt. I think selecting a prompt, once you select, I think selecting the prompt is not the hardest part, but it's deciding how to go ahead with the prompt. So once you select a prompt, it's kind of important to see what examples you could use from the prompt, what argument you could use. And when I selected my first prompt, which I think it was the prompt about with Maya Angelou's quote, I realized that for me as a person, I wasn't able to bring any of my personal opinions and arguments forward. And the DOK essay is a lot about personal opinions. So you have to see to what extent you'll be able to argue for or against prompt that you choose, because the TOK essay needs you to have an argument. It's not kind of a full like neutral thing. And so I would say plan a lot before picking your prompt.
Correct. Planning is the must. So Ishani, getting a A in the TOK is not an easy task. As a TOK teacher, definitely I will also realize how much hard work you have put in. So can you tell what is the correct essence of a well-written TOK essay to get an A?
Okay, there are a few things. I think one very important thing is before writing, you have to read a lot of previously written TOK essays, and the teachers do give a lot of examples, like they share a lot of examples, and plus you go on the internet, like there's no shortage of TOK essays that you can find. Even if, because the prompts change each year, it's not the content that you're looking at, but it's more of the structure of a TOK essay, because they give you a set amount of words and every student has to fit their argument in those words. So that includes an introduction, a conclusion, body paragraph, evidence paragraph. So I think understanding the structure, what to follow, and if you start off your essay with like, okay, 200 words for this, 300 words for that, it's a lot easier to plan it and do not have to deal with drastic word cuts later on in your essay. Another thing is to incorporate a lot of feedback and to take constructive criticism in the correct way. So it's very normal for the first draft that you send to come back like a lot of comments or a lot of changes. It's not something to get like extremely offended about. I think the more feedback that you take and the more times you work on it and send it back, and maybe sometimes annoy the teacher to give you more feedback, I think that helps a lot. And taking advice from a lot of different teachers, it can even be from a subject teacher, because I remember I showed mine to my psychology teacher who wasn't my TOK mentor, just because my argument was like one of my examples was based on psychology. So I think structure, looking for examples and taking a lot of feedback is very important.
Brilliant. Now Ishani, how did you practice writing a well-written TOK, and can you tell what all things you have done to get an A in the TOKs?
Okay. One thing that I did a lot was when I started writing my essay, I had maybe about 5 examples, like 5 arguments to put in it. And I think having those 5 was very important from the beginning, because obviously they got narrowed down to 3 in the process. But because I had 5, when I could figure out what worked and what didn't, and at the last minute, I didn't have to go and research a new idea to bring into the essay. So I definitely did a lot of planning. And another thing that I did while writing my essay was when I would sit down for a feedback session, teachers, like if you listen carefully to what teachers say, they do give away a lot of examples that you could use. And so noting down everything that they say is very important, because later when you look at the notes, you find an example that you could definitely use. So even if it's not exactly that, they can hint you in the correct direction for an example. So I think listening carefully is very important, and that that's definitely what I did. Another thing that I did was when I started writing, I wasn't extremely focused on technical things such as like the word count. I just wanted to get all of my ideas onto the page. So once I had just written everything that was in my mind, it was a lot easier to fine print that and to make it like coherent.
Wow, that's important. So TOK, classroom participation and attention is very important. Ishani, TOK is on critical thinking. Can you tell how a students can develop a critical thinking skill in the DP?
Critical thinking skills. I think the classes of TOK that you will have for the 2 years in your diploma program, it's not necessarily about essay writing tip, but it's a lot about like I realized later that the classes were what helped with my critical thinking because like you talk throughout the 2 years, you kind of talk to a teacher in literally every subject department, and all of them come with like examples or quotes. So for example, for science, we did a lot about the scientific hypothesis and at that and research and biases in science. And at the time of learning all that, I thought it might be like a little irrelevant because I knew I didn't want my TOK to be about science. But when I started writing my TOK essay, I realized that the thinking we did about biases and all really helped me shape like the biggest argument in my essay, which was about research bias and psychology. So I think just like in classes, you get a lot of critical thinking then.
That's a fantastic. So Ishani, two mistakes a student should avoid on their TOK journey from your personal experience.
Okay, mistake students should avoid. I think one big mistake that I possibly could have avoided as well was trying to put too many things into the essay because like the word limit that the IB gives is for a reason. They want to see how well you can shape an argument within a particular number of words. They don't want to see how many ideas you can put into one essay. You have to just words that are good and develop them really well instead of putting 6 or 7 ideas that are only half developed and not fully evidenced or explained in the essay. That I tried to fit in too many ideas in my essay the first time when I wrote it, and then I realized like while reading the essay that the person who was reading it wasn't getting an argument from the essay. They were just getting a lot of pretty random examples. So it's important to understand that you have to narrow things down, and if you want it to be a good essay, you need it to be like a few examples but extremely developed instead of a lot but not at all developed. Another mistake that someone should avoid, I think, is getting overwhelmed by a lot of feedback. I think the reaction to a lot of feedback should be positive rather than overwhelmed, because the feedback like really does help in the long run and in the moment. As a student, like I definitely found it annoying when I got a lot of feedback, and especially when it was feedback related to things like citations or the conclusion. But I think now that I'm looking back at it, the IB is extremely strict about plagiarism. It's extremely strict about citations. So every like little thing that a teacher tells you to change is actually very important in the long run.
Correct. TOK, academic honesty is very important. So Ishani, two tips for achieve a grade in TOK for DP students. What kind of the two tips would you like to give?
One tip is like every paragraph that you put in the TOK essay, even if your argument is from one thing, you should try your best to not repeat it in the same words. You have to know how to frame an argument in a lot of different ways when it's essentially saying the same thing, so that the information remains fresh to the person who's reading it and it doesn't feel repetitive. Just because you have a lot of words doesn't mean you have to say the same thing over and over again, even if the argument is the same. Another tip is to definitely have a sort of lower structure to the TOK essay. It's important to have two arguments in an essay, which is what I was taught, but the arguments do have to like flow in a certain way. They can't be completely unrelated to each other, and tying them together in the introduction and conclusion is very important. So when you start off the essay, you have to say, okay, this essay is going to discuss this and this. At the end of the essay, you have, so for my example, mine was about good and bad interpretation. So at the end, summing it up is really important because we were taught that the examiner looked mainly at the introduction and the conclusion to get an idea of what the essay is about. For example, my essay kind of ended with, so this concludes that a good or bad interpretation can be distinguished by, and then I listed all of my key arguments in different words in the essay. So that's very important.
Now, Ishani, we are going to move some of the question related to extended essay. Before I go to the question, can you tell about your extended essay subject and just explain the topic to our listeners?
Okay, so my extended essay was world studies, which is a little uncommon. Basically, to explain world studies, you take two subjects. So my subjects were global politics and psychology, which means you have two mentors, and your essay has the same amount of characters, same amount of words, but it's kind of combining two different subjects.
Brilliant.
So yeah.
So Ishani, can you tell what difficulty did you encounter during your journey of extended essay, and how did you overcome it?
My biggest difficulty was definitely figuring out how to combine the two subjects and how to deal with two mentors, like two different set of feedback, two different schedules, and two different things to put into one essay. But I think the good thing about that is I found my topic personally, like I had a passion for my topic because I found it very interesting, and I kind of overcame that by getting my mentors to sit together with me at times apart from the separate sessions. So if I was incorporating the individual feedback. But if I sat them down together, they could see how the essay kind of worked as one. And it's also important, for example, I did psychology and global politics, but I also showed my psychology mentor my global politics written work, and I showed my global politics mentor my stuff I had written for psychology. And so that really helps you imbibe the subjects together when you're doing the essay, so it doesn't look too different.
Brilliant. Two extended essays you provide. Brilliant. So Ishani, how did you familiarize yourself with the extended essay criteria to get a B in your extended essay?
So my mentors actually helped a lot with this, because at each stage of the extended essay, like I'd kind of sit down with my global politics mentor and we'd go like, okay, so in this criterion, if you were talking about how to imbibe, you're kind of at this level. For organization, you're at this level. And I think honest feedback is very important. If you know what level you're on, it's a lot easier to look at the grade boundaries for the next level and to see how you can rise to the next level or sustain that level when you continue writing.
Okay. So now tell me two mistakes a student should avoid on their way to EE journey in the DP.
One mistake is, and I struggle with this a lot, is procrastination. Procrastination not in doing the work, but procrastination in actually writing the essay, because a lot of times students get, like especially me, because there was so much content, I got so caught up with research that I forgot that I have to put the research somewhere as well. I can't just keep reading and reading. So it's hard, but it's important to draw a line after a few hours of researching and put it down onto paper, instead of spending all of your day just reading and then at the last minute trying to combine it all at once. Another mistake that students should avoid is underestimating the word limit, because when you look at it, it seems like a lot of words, but once you start writing, you realize that it's not a lot of words, because every extended essay topic is extremely comprehensive. So it's really not a lot of words, and you have to know that in advance, so you're not cutting 400, 500 words to the last.
That's a good one. So two tips for getting an A or B in extended essay for DP students.
Okay, I think communication and feedback with the mentors is probably the most important thing, because every subject teacher is like the expert of the field that you're studying in the extended essay. And so it's very important, especially because you're also going to be graded by another subject teacher. So the minds do think the same. And apart from that, it's also nice to have students who are doing the same like topic of extended essay read through yours and give you feedback. If you have someone who's writing about the same subject, and with extended essay, you don't really have to worry about anyone copying your work, because everyone's research question is so different. So if you have a trusted person who can give you honest and good feedback, that's important as well. Another thing is to really make the structure before you start writing, so that you know how many words to put into each subtopic and how many subtopics you want.